Yes, indeed. Welcome into episode 65 of Total Hockey Now here on the Total Hockey Now YouTube channel. I am at Puckline Thoughts, Adam Bernard. That man over there at Ant Rivera 86. That man down there, Christopher Merez at Fuzzy Chris 91. Couple of minutes late today. Ant had a little trouble putting the tarp down on the in-season portion of the Subway to Shea podcast. A little windy today, and we've all seen when you have like a full grounds crew, it could sometimes be tough to get a tarp down. So.
Yeah, and I got to do it solo, so you know how hard that is.
Yeah. So, we won't delve too we're a hockey podcast. Won't talk too much about that. Excellent coverage throughout the Mets' unexpected and deep playoff run over there at Subway to Shea. So, you're a baseball guy. Go check that out. But good to have you full-time Devils now in hockey till spring training.
Yeah. Full-time, back on the hockey grind, back on the Devils grind, and had to clean up a little bit, had to get rid of the baseball playoff beard. So clean shaven, not totally clean shaven, because if you see my face fully shaved, it looked like a baby, but had to keep a little bit of it. A little scruff.
That's fair. The Mets may disappoint you, but Anthony will not. So there you go. There's one thing.
I like that line.
It's one thing that Ant won't do. We won't talk about the Devils goaltending yet, but for now, Ant won't disappoint you.
He'll never let you down. That's for sure. But we'll talk. There's plenty of news to get to here today. Later on, we'll debut a new segment called "Dump or Chase the Pace," where we'll guess whether we want to pick an over/under, basically, but a fun way to spin it. We'll do a deep dive on the Winnipeg Jets later, or as I like to call the segment, the Good Jets, because as you see over that shoulder, I am a New York Jets fan. Not good times over in Florham Park, New Jersey right now with gangrene. We'll see if they bounce back against the Patriots next week. But nonetheless, let's get to the NHL headlines here. That's what we're here for, right? About maybe 20 minutes before we went live today, Vegas somehow finds some more cap space, and they signed Shea Theodore to a 7-year extension that's worth just under $7.5 million a year. So yeah, they've got their top 3 defensemen there with Trangelo, Hannafin, and now Theodore all locked up for the foreseeable future. And that Mark Stone long-term injury reserve cap relief is coming at some point, I guess. I mean, maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, they were probably like, Mark, when are you going to decide to help us out here and go on the injured list? What month should we expect this at? And then we'll sign Theodore and get this extension done. Look, they are shoring up their defensive core there, and I see Vegas being a part of the playoff discussion for a long time. It's crazy to think that an expansion team like Vegas has just been a part of any type of playoff discussion for as long as they have, actually, and going to the Stanley Cup, winning the Stanley, it's very interesting, especially in sports, to see an expansion team be as successful as Vegas has. I think, I don't know about you, but I think they're one of the more successful franchises to come out of expansion ever.
They are, but I do like to point out that, and it's not discounting what they did. Going into that expansion draft, there had never been an expansion draft with those parameters. The previous expansion, teams, from like the Wild, the Predators, going back to the Lightning, Senator, Sharks, their expansion drafts were basically the 5th line members of each team, the 7th and 8th defensemen from each team. Like they weren't getting good players. Where going into that expansion draft, the rules were different. The GMs had no idea how to handle it. So they're like, oh, they can only protect X amount of guys. So they were like doing things like, hey, if you take this guy instead of this guy, we'll hand you this draft pick. Or if you take this bad contract off our books, we'll leave this guy unprotected. Like all of that, like they had no idea. So Vegas was basically handed a competitive team out of the gate because the other GMs just didn't know what the hell to do.
No, but it's I will give Vegas credit. I understand that, like you said, this was a very different expansion draft, and it was very, trying to understand how to navigate it. But there were some terrible GMs making some terrible decisions there, and that's what it exposed. Because I wouldn't say Seattle had as good of a choice, but there were some very questionable picks. There were good players there that they could have taken. They chose to go a different route. Vegas still had to pick players and turn them into something. And the teams that just didn't understand how it worked, like, to me, I'm like, hey, you're an NHL team, figure it out, kind of thing. Kind of like Vegas's cap situation. I have no idea how they could still hand out contracts. I don't know. It, like you said, it just happened. So I haven't been able to try to wrap my head around understanding how all this fits under the cap. And I probably never will understand either. And most of us won't. But I will give them credit. They went out, they got players. And ever since, Vegas has been proactive in signing players, trading for players, being competitive. They were elite right out of the get-go, not in terms of players, but in terms of how that club was managed.
Yes.
Right out of the get-go, they understood how it worked. They were good. Everybody seemed to understand what was going on, and they built a competitive hockey team. So I will give kudos to the management of the Golden Knights over just saying, hey, nobody knew how this worked, because
they
didn't either, right?
On their end, but they had a much easier expansion draft than any team before that, and GMs and the other GMs wised up by the time Seattle came around.
I think they were served a lesson as to how, I mean, there were teams. I'm pretty sure Shea Theodore was one of those, where the Ducks were like, hey, take him and I'll give you this. You know what I mean? And Shea Theodore now's cashing in.
Teams before that never had that. They were like, pick between our 15th best forward or our 10th best defenseman. Like in every era before that, like Vegas got a Vegas buffet while everybody else got like what was in the Denny's dumpster. You know what I mean?
Since Seattle came afterwards, they get the same type of expansion, but they haven't. They went to the one playoff appearance. They won a round, but they haven't had the same success as Vegas has.
Well, I mean, we're getting a little off track here because we're on story one. We got a lot to go. My whole thing about that signing is he doesn't play, going back to Shea Theodore, he doesn't play the power play. He doesn't play the penalty kill. I get he's your first guy up if Pietrangelo or Hannafin go down. But like you spend that's your second highest, third highest defenseman, and he doesn't do either of those things on a regular basis for you. You know, it's only a $2 million and change raise off of what he's making now. But again, it's just they find ways to make it work, and kudos to them.
They're like the Dodgers.
Yeah,
they
like
just find money.
Something about being out west, I guess. Staying out west, the Utah Hockey Club announced that Sean Durzi and John Marino are going to be sidelined for multiple months after their respective surgeries. Durzi 4 to 6 months after undergoing surgery on his right shoulder. Marino 3 to 4 months after undergoing surgery on his lower back. So two of the guys that a guy that they were planning on building around, that was one of their top pairing guys, they don't have, and a guy they brought in to add some grit to that blue line don't have. So interesting to see how Utah handles it, but they did stock up on the blue line, so the depth is running thin, but they're withstanding it, I guess.
And they got Sergachev to lead the charge there. That was a big get for them. I like John Marino and his time that he was on the Devils. I thought like you said, he brought some grit to the team. Man, Sean Durzi, he was one of my favorites in fantasy and picking up late, and the points that he used to get for me. So this sucks for, Utah, which I could have say, I don't know if we all thought, but I definitely thought that they were on the cusp of possibly making the playoffs, being one of those final teams to get a possible spot. But let's see how they react from this and what happens in the next couple of months.
It's tough. It's a tough loss for Utah, both on like the ice and from a fantasy perspective for sure. But I mean, just shoulder surgeries are tough, man. Those take forever to heal. You don't know if the player is going to come back in the same state that he was before. And I mean, Utah was off to just a rocking start as well, which makes the Sergachev trade look even better now because, yes, it hurts, but Sergachev can kind of step up, claim those minutes, go out there, deliver. I don't think it hurts as much, but it's still tough to see.
Definitely tough to see. Well, but early in the season, I'm sure they'll find a way around it. They'll get their depth tested, that's for sure. Now, two defensemen that are coming back tonight, Luke Hughes and Brett Pesce, both making their Luke Hughes has played for the Devils before, but Pesce, it's his debut. Luke, it's 2024 debut. Luke, Brett Pesce had been recovering from offseason surgery on his fibula, while Hughes has been dealing with the shoulder injury suffered last month. So, we'll talk a little bit more about that Devils-Red Wings game to close the show. But, I mean, Devils got off to a pretty solid start this year, and now that you're getting basically a whole pairing back on your blue line, which will certainly be nice.
Yeah, definitely needed too, because they've been giving up a lot of goals. I mean, whether it's Markstrom or in the last start, Allen as well. And I got both of them. Thankfully, I forgot to change and put Allen to start, and that doesn't affect me from that last game. But it's been a rough start to see them give up this many goals, especially with the way that this defense was set up in the offseason. They got to really step it up, come together. I don't know if it's Sheldon Keefe's got to get them going or what, but the defense got to step up definitely a little bit here.
Yeah, for those of you who are not keeping score, that's 14 goals in the last 2 games. So that is not ideal. So adding, Pesce's going to help, right? He's going to bring in some good stability. He's going to help shore up that blue line. Luke Hughes can contribute both offensively, both defensively. Maybe this takes a little bit of weight off as well. Dougie Hamilton. This will definitely help New Jersey. There's no question about that, and they need it. Because again, as we established at the beginning of the year, there's no excuses for the Devils. None. So figure it out. You know what I mean? We have all the pieces here. I was told before that it was goaltending. Now we have solved it. So let's go.
But
I have money to make. I have money to make. Let's go. You know what I mean? I don't have time to hear
a lot of people, we all believe in even as a Ranger fan, like it was like, all right, the Devils are going to be good this year, and big game for the Rangers tonight, too, playing a rematch of the Eastern Conference finals there with the Panthers. Bobo versus Shesterkin, 2 of the top Russian netminders going at it later. Staying in New York, Anthony Duclair will be out 4 to 6 weeks for the Islanders because of a lower body injury. So they're one of their few sources of offense there, already off the table. And let's talk about how the Islanders, what was it? They lost the game where they only gave up 10 shots, but one went in and 29, and they had 29 shots on goal against Detroit and lost. I mean, if there's a typical Islanders loss, that is it right there.
Nothing has changed over the last couple of years with the Islanders. Lou Lamoriello still there. I mean, Duclair was one of their top signings, and now he's out 4 to 6 weeks. He was supposed to bring as much offense as possibly he could, but there's still so many offensive deficiencies that this team deals with. They're going to struggle. I think they're going to struggle all season long. It doesn't matter if Patrick Wa's there or what. This team is going to struggle to score goals, and they're going to lose games like this. Maybe they'll win a couple of games, 1-0 or whatever. But man, I think it's time. I keep saying this every time. I think it's time to let Lou go. It's time for the Islanders to move on. If they want to win, if they want to see something different, it's time to let that guy go.
I think there's a lot of Islander fans that probably agree with that sentiment.
The Islanders are just so dry. Like you watch them play and it's just so meaningless. And I don't know how people watch 82 Islander games a year, because I feel like that would you could cure insomnia watching them. I don't think it's like totally their fault. I mean, they played well enough defensively, right? But like you both said, they can't score goals, and that at the end of the day is important. And it was tough for Duclair as well, because he got hurt against Montreal. It didn't look like anything serious. I feel like it was just awkward. I feel like it was an awkward pull for his groin, and now he's got to watch. And the Islanders are going to try to find goal scoring from somebody in that lineup.
Yeah, right now Holmstrom is expected to take that spot on the top line. We'll see how that works out with Horvat and Barzal, 2 guys that are going to be leaned on even more to produce. Staying a lot of injuries and a lot of early in the season here. St. Louis Blues center Robert Thomas will miss at least 6 weeks with a broken ankle after he took a puck off of it against Winnipeg. GM Doug Armstrong said he'll be reevaluated in 6 weeks. That puck always finds the spot on your legs that has minimal to no padding, or the weak spot on the skate. It never goes where you're protected.
Shin pads are so if you know as a hockey player, right? I try to pull my shin pad over the tongue of my skate to get as far down as I can to make sure that it covers. And it's always like it hits like that one spot on the side of your ankle, or it gets right out just where the laces are. And it's I don't know how
It
this
doesn't feel good.
it does not feel good. I can promise you that as a beer league player who does not block shots, I can tell you that when I do, they hurt. And that's that. Every time I hear one of these stories, I'm like, see, that's why I don't block shots.
That's how hard a puck is. It can break a bone just on impact. So staying in the infirmary, Yuri Slafkovsky will be out a week with an upper body injury. It'll be at least another 2 weeks before Macklin Celebrini returns from a lower body injury, probably more. They said they'll look again in 2 weeks. And here's the story that I've been waiting to you talk to Chris about here. Our buddy Jacob Trouba, who do you hate more, by the way, him or Kreider?
I mean, Trouba,
It's close.
to me, it's still Kreider because he took away something that, like, you know,
What
like
if?
yes, like Montreal has been to like a final six. I get it, but that was peak era Carey Price right there. So like we still hate Chris Kreider. That was specific to Montreal. Like I feel like Jacob Trouba has just like he's doing this to everybody. So it's not specific to Montreal, but man, I have already argued with most of Rangers Twitter, so I'm not going to go on a tangent here. I understand you're trying to bait me into it, and that is fair because we know we can bait me into this. Right, we know we can bait me into a lot of it. But I mean, look, I will say this: that is a headshot. Whether you want to believe it or not, if you can't see that the glasses aren't working. Because last time I checked, if you get hit in the chest, your head is not flicking back like that. You're like the way this isn't physics, but the way gravity and impact works is a little bit different. So, Justin Barron's head goes backwards. It's a typical Jacob Trouba kind of elbow wailing. It's too high, and obviously the league isn't going to do anything. And the reason they don't do anything is you see a lot of people are saying, hey, it's just, it's a hockey hit. It's this or that. Former players say, so if former players are saying they're okay with it, then you got it. It's not going to change, but this isn't the first time Trouba's done it. He clearly likes to, the documentary on Amazon, and he's painting with his shoulder and his elbow, and he's basically jumping into a canvas with it. So clearly he's doing the off-season work to be ready now. But I mean, at this point, what do you want from him? It's kind of like Tom Wilson. It's gonna happen. You just hope it doesn't happen to you.
Yeah, if the discipline isn't to a high standard, he's gonna just keep doing this. So I mean, it happened to Timo Meier a couple years ago in the playoffs. Now again, and these things are gonna keep happening with Trouba. But I mean,
the easiest fix here, and I know nobody likes it and nobody wants it because it's going to burn somebody at some point, but it's to take the double IHF hockey rule, which is anything to the head, you just get suspended. Or, the double IHF, like, say what you want about that. It's as black and white as you can get. Like, it may not make everybody happy, but it probably pisses everybody off at once. But it's black and white, and you know what you're getting. And there's no excuses about how tall a player is or how this or how that. If you make contact, if you make contact with the head, that's, it's an easy one. There's no if, ands, or but about it. You may not like it, but the onus then goes on the player to make sure that he is not, going out there and taking a risk, taking a risk by throwing a hit that could get him, can end him up. In the same way that we treat players with their sticks, right? It doesn't matter, if you're turning, if you're this, if your stick clips him in the face, you're responsible for your stick at all times. So don't go in there with a stick that's too high. Don't start, wailing around. That's what I want to see. And again, I understand that it could get, no owner wants or no team wants to see it because it's going to burn more teams a little bit more than others, right? But it's the safest way and the most fair way to make sure that you don't get situations like this. If you really want to reduce the amount of headshots and you want to reduce the amount of, contact to the head, then you got to penalize it. No ifs, ands, or buts. And just tell players, hey man, there's a lot of space on the body, right? Find it. Don't make contact with his head. Simple.
It's a bad hit. It's it's borderline, but it's on the head. It's if you're looking at Jacob Trouba's, low light wheel, we'll call it, it's probably not even a top 5 worst hit in his career, which is sad to say. I think the only way Trouba learns, because you're not going to get that, policy change that you were talking about using the IIHF rules.
No.
Sometimes you just need a taste of your own medicine. And I'm not advocating somebody take a run at him, but sometimes that's the only way a guy like that learns. It's like a bully almost. Like the way to get a bully is you punch him in the mouth first. Then now all of a sudden they're not expecting it. So
it was unfortunate that Arbor Jackeye wasn't in the lineup that night because he said it afterwards, like, hey, I probably would have handled it.
And he also pointed out that they have a game in about a month. So he and that's the thing. Like players don't forget. They do not forget.
They certainly do not. I know that the NHL won't adopt the double IHF rule. We all hate it. Like I get, but if you're serious about concussions, and you're serious about points of contact to the head, then you got to draw a line in the sand somewhere. And the double IHF has done it. Hate them for what hate them for everything. But if I watch one of those games, I mean, even to the neck, they're just like, hey, you're gone, and you're like, it sucks. But they are as consistent as possible. So,
and that's the thing. The point you make about at least like you may not like the rule, but the rule is the rule, and the rule is black and white.
Yeah.
And it does alleviate that where it's like, oh, last time, player X hit that person and it wasn't a suspension. Meanwhile, it looks just like it this time, and now it's 4 games, and it's like, oh, but it was different. But it's like, how is it different? You know what I mean? It's
almost like none of us know what goaltender interference is. Like, good luck trying to figure it out, or like what a catch of the NFL is. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know, and it's so subjective. So at some point, you got to try to like bring it as close to the line as possible. And I feel like that is one way that you can do it. But yes, players don't want to do that because some are going to be like, hey, this affects me a little bit more. Like Jacob Trouba. I'm sure he's not advocating for that.
No, that would hurt probably his bottom line in the long run. Lastly here, before we get up to dump or chase the pace, contract extension discussions between Paul Maurice and Florida Panthers were pretty quick, apparently. There was no negotiation, Maurice said. They made me a really nice offer, and we shook hands, and I said, thank you, and that was it. And I mean, I would imagine that's how guy just won your Stanley Cup. Probably one of the more likable coaches in the league, both by players and coaches and media and everybody and fans. I mean, you see some of this like behind-the-scenes footage with him, and it's like, I'd skate through a wall for that guy for sure. Like he knows how to like talk to his players and like yell at his players, but not in a way where you're demeaning or yelling at them, but just trying to like motivate them and get them going. Yeah, he's an all-timer, Paul Maurice.
Yeah, that's I'm not surprised that it was probably simple. They probably like you said, you win a Stanley Cup, you make them a nice offer. There's no state tax in state income tax in Florida. The weather's nice. Probably wasn't really hard to convince them to be like, hey, want to stick around and win more championships?
Want another kick at the can this year? Let's go. Let's do it as much as we can.
That's absolutely fair. Good for them. Good for Florida, man. The Florida as a state is doing really well in hockey, and that's unfortunate since Florida is far from Montreal. But good for the state of Florida for having competitive hockey teams.
I mean, they are the state of hockey right now. Minnesota might take exception to that title, but I mean, when you're talking about championships, the Cup has spent a lot of time in Florida over the last few years. That's for sure. But there we go. Now you said Florida. That gives me a nice segue to our next segment here, the dump or chase the pace. Eventually there'll be some sort of intro theme to that, just not this week. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a pace a player is on right now, and then put a number out there and say, can they maintain that pace or exceed last year's total or not? So we said Florida. Let's start with Nikita Kucherov, who has 7 goals to start the season, and he had a career high of 44 goals last season. Are you dumping or chasing that he'll have more than 44 goals this season?
I'm going to dump. I don't think he is a goal scorer. Like, he could score goals. Yes. But I thought the 44 was pretty high. To me, he is an elite hockey player. He was getting a little bit disrespected in a lot of our mock drafts and fantasy drafts. Like, people just didn't think he was going to be able to keep up his pace because Steven Stamkos wasn't there. And then he's just been like, hey man, I he can turn water into wine. It doesn't matter who is there. He is so good. His vision is so good. I believe that he can flirt with his assist pace that he set last year. He's got to start again. It's weird because like he's so good, but I just don't see him as a goal scorer. Like I don't see him as a 50 goal scorer, right? I think 40 is like a stretch, but he could finish with like, let's say, I don't know, 40 goals and like, I don't know, 105 assists. You know what I mean? Like, and that would be like, that's not out of the reach. I think he could get more assists this year than he did last year.
So you would take over 100 points before over 44 goals, over 100 assists before over 44 goals.
Over 100 assists seems like a lot, but he did it once. And I feel like Tampa Bay maybe aren't as good of a team as they were last year. So maybe there's more catching up hockey to play at certain points. But Nikita Kucherov is an elite passer, man. I could probably score one NHL goal if I played with him for a little bit.
And what do you got? Over, or are you going to say 44 over 44 or over, or are we going under this year? Are we dumping it?
I'm going to chase. I'm going to chase. Right. I think it could be 44 or over, not by a lot, but I think it could be done. And it's for the reason that I've been talking about this top line, probably my favorite top line right now. Him, Brayden Point, Jake Gensel. I think that Kucherov will now be, obviously with Stamkos now being off the team, he's going to be the guy. He's going to be their guy, and I see him scoring maybe a couple more goals than he's had a couple of 40-goal seasons. 2016, 2017, he had 40, 41 in 2018, 2019. Obviously, the last year with the 44. I think he'll maybe get around 45 to 47-ish goals. I like Kucherov, and if I was higher in the draft, I would have picked him. He would have been my first pick. That's who I was gunning for. Obviously, he doesn't go past like 6 or 7, but I really like Kucherov, and I think last year was so huge for him and Tampa. And with all these guys healthy out there in that top line, like I said, I see him, just barely surpassing it.
I'm going to go just barely missing it. And right now, he's been the source of scoring on that line because Jake Gensel's only got 2 goals on the season right now. Brayden Point's got 4 goals and 2 assists. And Brayden had, 46 and 44 last year, 51 and 44 the year before that. So I think some of that goal scoring that, maybe was coming from Stamkos now kind of gets divided evenly between Kucherov and Point. And at some point, Jake Gensel's going to start putting the puck in the net. That's the reason why they brought him in. I mean, Gensel hasn't, he had the last time he played, so he played 50 games in 23, 24, had 22 goals there. He had 30-goal seasons back in 20 prior to that. So, I mean, Gensel's going to start getting those goals at some point, and Kucherov will start passing off. I think Kucherov breaks 40, but doesn't get to the 44. I do think the 100 assist total is definitely attainable, like Chris said, though, because, at some point the goals are going to start going to the other side of the line with Gensel. So I'll take under 44, but I'm okay with that 100 assist number there. Next up on the list is going to be Artemi Panarin, who off to a fantastic start this year. He had a career high 120 points last season. He sits at 13 and is on pace for 177. Not realistic. This is not the 1980s NHL. But are you dumping or chasing that he clears 120 points again? I think, I think it's going to be tough to get up there again. But if the Rangers keep playing and producing the way they have been out of the gate, absolutely, I'm taking that 120 and over if they can continue to play even close to what they're doing right now.
I'm going to go under here. I mean, he is very good. I'm not going to take that away from him. And the Rangers are a very good team. He's shooting 28%, which is that's on a whole other planet, right? He's racking up points. Most of those points, over a little bit of half of them are even strength points. So I expect at some point the league is going to start to at least pay more attention to him, right? As they should. But 120, man, is right up there. And I don't see him as like 300 shot player, right? So like if his shooting percentage starts to regress to its mean, right? Like he can still pick up points, right? I get that, but a lot of the early season like boom has been the goals to me. So I'm gonna be a little bit more cautious here and say no. 120 is still good. Like if he finishes with 100, if he finishes with like 115 points or 110, like you got your value for him in fantasy. Like don't get it wrong. I just don't know if he's pushing 120 though.
And what do you got?
I am going to say, I'm just trying to pull up his stats for. Oh, all right. I'm gonna say, is there anything for is even a chase? Like if he gets around 120, is that still a chase or is that under?
So you're gonna be the guy that bets like the exact one there. You're gonna say he hits right on 120.
Yeah.
So you're gonna try and bet 0 on roulette is what you're doing.
Yep.
Okay. Hey, listen, there's not. I mean, if you're thinking he's going to produce, but like to exceed 120 is a lot, you know that's a way you can go there. And I recognize he hasn't come close. He had 90-point seasons previously, where his career high. I think this is probably the last really great year we're going to get out of Panarin, so that's why I'm going over. I think this is going to be the year where he does it all, and then he starts to regress slowly after this year.
He had a huge jump last season. From years past. If you look at 58, 96, 92, 120, that's a big jump there. I think it spreads out a little more evenly with Trocheck and Lafreniere. Hopefully Lafreniere gets a lot of points because he's on my fantasy team. So I think it spreads out a little more evenly with Panarin. But like you said, I kind of do agree with your point that this would be the year for him, because I just don't know where this Rangers team goes from here, and how it's shaped moving forward once this year is over. So maybe he does get back to that, but I don't know. I think it's hard for me. I think maybe he either gets to 120 or he just falls short of it.
You have to understand, I'm looking at this season as, because Igor Shesterkin is either going to sign a huge deal and ruin their cap, or he's gone after this year. I'm looking at everything at this season as yes, like over, boom, like they have to go for it all this year, because like something's going to change for sure next year. Like
Artemi Panarin's career high in shots was back in 2017, 2018 when he was in Columbus, and that was 228. He had 303. Like he fired the puck on net, and he was rewarded obviously because he still shot about just a tick up from his career average. So he's a career 14.8% shooter. Last year he shot 16.2. So it's a small tick up, which like it validates the reason why he scored more goals, but it's because of the volume of shots that he took. I don't know if he can sustain that, because the Rangers are not really a team that fires the puck a ton. Like they're not a fast paced kind of like PDO run up the ice and stuff. And there's a lot of good players on that team that could shoot as well. So like there's only so much to give. I understand that the question is, does he hit 120 points? But 49 goals last year was a lot. So in one sense, if he scores less goals, he's going to need a lot more assists to kind of balance it out. And I don't know if he's there. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if he's like an 85, 90 assist guy.
I mean, 71 was quite the number last year.
71 was quite a number, yeah.
If he maintains his current, he's averaging 3.5 shots per game, so that puts him at 287 if he plays a full 82. So it's a little bit down from last year, but would be his second highest shot total by far. So maybe that, I don't know, but I think he can. Like I said, I think this is the year that it's his last big year before we start to see. So I think it's just all going to be left out there this year. And there's going to be a lot of that attitude with the Rangers this year, just because, again, with Shesterkin's future, either they're not going to have the cap space to bring in a lot of other guys, or they're not going to have an elite tier goalie. So Ants on the money. I'm over versus below on the 120. Up next, Mr. Cale Makar. Cale Makar, 12 assists currently, and posted a total of a nice 69 last season. So his career high is 90. So at this point, I think 69 is going to be easy for him to hit. He's got 10 assists in the first 6 games, becoming just one of the 6 defensemen in NHL history to achieve that feat. So he's clearly going to be on a torrid pace if he stays healthy. So do we think he clears his career high of 90 this year? I sure do, because I think a lot of that Colorado offense is going to start with Makar's rushes, and it'll end up on Rantanen or, McKinnon or Ross Colton, who's playing well. And it'll end up off of one of their sticks. But I think he's going to lead the rush, and he'll get a lot of both primary and secondary assists to help him get back to over 90.
Yeah, I have the over here. I don't have to think very long about it. He leads the league today in points. He is a defenseman, and he's basically like having another forward on the ice. We've already discussed how absolutely miserable the Colorado Avalanche are as a team and defensively. They're going to have to play so much catch-up hockey, like more than they probably want to. And their power play is still good, and Cale Makar is a big reason for that. And Makar's kind of off to a little bit of a slower pace in terms of shots. He's not, like, at least for me, I find like he's not taking enough shots. He had 231 last year, which was quite the jump from 176. I mean, he had 240 the previous year before that. Anyways, he's a career just sub 10% shooting. He's shooting 13% now. And he has 2 goals. So, like, I don't think he's going to score like 20 goals again. I think maybe he tops out at about like 15. But I can see him racking up 75 plus assists without really breaking a sweat. If you're feeding that puck to guys like Rantanen, if you're feeding that puck over to guys like McKinnon, I'm assuming Valeri Nichushkin comes back. Imagine if he gets Gabriel Landeskog for any point, like that power play starts to be just a thing that you fear. So I like the up here on assists. 90 points for the season is good. Don't forget he missed a couple of games as well. He's never played a full 82 games. I don't know if he gets 100, because that's like 100 points is real something, but I think he can flirt with it, and most of those points are going to be assists.
I will bite on this and chase for you guys.
Oh, man.
He is going to be, with all these injuries, he's going to be one of the main sources to score points on this team. And he had a 20 assist hike from the year before. If he could stay healthy and kind of get through more of a full season, because like Chris said, he hasn't played a full season yet of games. But if he could, get closer to a full season's worth of games, I think that he can get there. And like I said, with all the injuries that Colorado has just befallen upon, he's going to be so important. He's already, top on the power play, a big portion of the penalty kill. So he's going to be on the ice a lot, and he's going to be a part of that mix a lot. So I will chase along with Chris Morace.
We are all chasing on the over on both of those. 2 more guys to go before we talk a little Winnipeg Jets hockey and give a bet for the night before we get out of here. This one, talked about him and alluded to how many games he's going to play earlier. Mark Stone, 56 games played. Are we dumping or chasing the pace that he will clear this? Because right now he's played in all the games this year. So, I mean, he's not going to do that. So just in general, do we think he makes over 56 games played this year, or is 50 his, that's his number?
Under.
Yeah.
Under. His back's going to give out at some point. It's early in the year, right? He's dealt with so many back injuries. I'm pretty sure he's had back surgery. Those things, they don't really go away. They kind of act up, right? And I'm sure he manages it and he deals with it from a game to game basis. But I mean, how else will Vegas get the cap relief that they need at the trade deadline if Mark Stone isn't on IR until playoffs? So that already wipes him out for about 20 games. So,
And I mean, it's still early in the season, listen, the desert gets cold at night. So come wintertime, that, the back tightens up a little bit. Maybe that's when it happens. But right now, it's still October in Vegas. It's still pretty warm out there. So, I mean, maybe that's what Mark Stone is. He's like an October, November player. And then we'll see again in like March, April.
Yeah, it goes down to what in Vegas? Like 27 degrees Celsius? What is it? Like people walking around with sweaters? Is that it? Like,
No, the desert gets cold at night, man. You have some cold winter nights there. I mean, not maybe by Canadian standard, but the desert does get cold.
I just want you to know whatever cold is in the desert is short season here. Just because there are a lot of Canadians listening to you right now going, ain't no way he just said it gets cold in the desert, right? Because
no, that's science. It heats up during the day, but if there's no cloud cover to keep the heat in, it all goes away at night.
So it cools off a little bit, but it's not cold.
Let's see. I'm trying to find the record low.
Trying to find the weather of the desert. Okay,
the record low.
Okay, cold. Here's a general rule of thumb: if you cannot produce ice, it's not cold.
8 degrees was the 8 degrees Fahrenheit, the record low, set 3 times in Vegas history.
I don't know. Okay, so 3 times in history.
Minus 13 Celsius.
Jesus Christ, that's a regular day. That's a regular that's a Tuesday in January. minus 13. The car still starts on the first turn.
There's no multiple cranks on that one.
No, one turn. That's it. 13. Listen to that. Minus 13 Celsius, and it is cold. Damn.
Let's see. Well, regardless of the varying degrees of cold will screw you back up, even if it is at 45, 50 degrees.
That's what we were getting at here, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Just to make sure, because I just want you to know that.
No, I'm not.
I sometimes wear shorts and it's single digit Celsius. I'm like, that's fine. That's a regular day.
No, I'm the guy that's still in shorts in Northern California when everybody else has their midweight jackets on, say. So, Mark Stone, 56 games played. I'm also taking the under here because, I mean, how do you not take the? What do you got, Ant?
Yeah. Mark this down for me. We'll revisit it at the end of the season. 52 games, I'm going to say, for Mark Stone. I'm going with the under as well, and we'll throw in a shiny new toy for the Las Vegas Golden Knights to play with at the trade deadline.
All right. And Justin Rocker checking in out there in Arizona. Sorry for the loss of your team. But yeah, wearing shorts and a Doan jersey. Says it gets chilly there. Somehow I think that helps Chris's argument more than my argument.
Yeah.
The quotations.
It gets chilly. It wouldn't surprise me if Justin's from somewhere like he didn't wake up in Arizona. You know what I mean? Like, it gets chilly. If you're wearing shorts and a Doan jersey, that's the outfit. You know what I mean? Like, that's a good outfit. But yeah, it gets chilly. It is not cold. It is not.
Fair enough.
That's it. Go north of Minnesota in February. Go to Winnipeg on a Wednesday in February, and then we'll have a different conversation about what cold is.
Fair enough. One more guy to get to here before we get to the Winnipeg Jets, and this is a nice segue. Connor Hellebuck. He's on pace, to go 60-0 because he's 5-0 in the 5 games he's played. And that's obviously not going to happen. But 37 wins last season. I mean, he's got to easily clear that. No,
man, I don't know if it's easy, but I mean, the Jets are just different. This is a good hockey team. They're well coached. Offensively, they're getting contributions from so many different guys. They're strong defensively. They play well. I mean, and Hellebuck's going to play a lot as well, right? Like, I don't know who's backing up there. I know I don't think it's Laurent Brossoit either. I mean, I think he clears 40. I think he clears 40 wins. If he plays 60 games, I think he can win 40 of them.
So his career high is 44. Would you go or is that just like getting a little greedy?
That's definitely stretched. That's been a minute too. He hasn't won 44 games in a while. He's won 37 the last 2 years. So I think he goes over. But I would, if I was a betting man, I would do like Ant said it on the previous. I would sprinkle a little bit dead on 37. Like specifically 37. If there's a book that's like, hey, Connor Hellebuck wins exactly 37 games and it pays like, I don't know, 600 to 1, I would, $10, see what we turn it into.
You said 44, right?
We're gonna do 37, but his career high is 44. So let's start with 37.
I think he clears 37. but I don't think he clears 44. I think we're around 42, 43-ish is where I'm having him.
By the way, checking back in with Justin. Grew up in Kansas City, so winners are still amazing. Great content. Thought on Velarde turning it up. We're going to get to the Jets in a little bit here, so stay tuned on that and devote our whole next segment to them. So there we go. For me, with Connor Hellebuck, what I'd be interested to see, I mean, he's going to be 32 at his next birthday. This is a guy that plays 60 games a year. You know, they trot him out there. Doesn't really get hurt, knock on wood. At what point do you, for his longevity, you start to invest in maybe a little bit of a better backup down the line than like the Eric Comries and Laurent Brossois of the world, so you can have him rested for the playoffs? Because let's face it, what's the running joke with Winnipeg right now? Regular season studs, but they're going to get eliminated in the first round. So at some point, I think that has to, be addressed.
I think we see how this season goes. If the same result happens in the playoffs as last year, I think, like you said, there's going to be a more emphasis to get a backup goalie to keep him fresh and to keep him healthy as well, because he is the guy out there in Winnipeg. So we'll see what happens when it comes to that whole situation for sure.
I mean, he plays a lot, right? But I feel like he's still one of those old school traditional goalies that is a true workhorse. Like, he goes out there and like he's always been like this. And I get that at some point, like, Father Time is undefeated and he's going to slow down, but he has been healthy. And through, again, I understand the Winnipeg Jets aren't very good in the playoffs. That is through no fault of Connor Hellebuck.
Correct.
Like, I mean, the Jets did him no favors against Colorado, because Colorado just threw to the kitchen sink and, at some point, good team score. And then the year before that, when they played Vegas, the Winnipeg Jets showed up for a game and a period. They played 4 periods in that entire series, and the rest of it, they were miserable. So I don't think it's necessarily a Connor Hellebuck problem. I think it's more of a Winnipeg Jets trying to figure it out once they get to the playoffs. But I feel like if they wanted to address that, they would have done it, and they haven't just yet. So for this season, I think it's there. Like, I think he can go and get it, right? Health being the most important thing for him. If he stays healthy and he's rolling out there, the only thing that could slow him down is if, like, the Jets are so far ahead in their division and lock up a playoff spot early that then they start to say, okay, let's scale back your workload here. But by that point, maybe he already has 37 wins, and who cares?
Yeah, I'll say, I think, I know he's gotten to 37 the last 2 years. I think he can maybe hit 40, but I don't think he's going to come to 44. I think that was one of those seasons. I mean, 44, 11, and 9 that year, 924 save percentage, 236 goals against in 67 games. So I don't know if he gets to 44, but I think he can, clear 37, maybe even hit 40. Now, speaking of the Winnipeg Jets, and yes, we're talking about the good Jets. And just in case you were curious, it's the one on the right, not the one on the left. It's I'm not a bitter Jet fan at all. I didn't come in optimistic at all for Gangrene this year, and now they're maybe a worse record than Zach Wilson at that point. But nonetheless, here we are. We're talking about the good Jets, and it's been good times to start the season in Winnipeg. Right out of the gate here, 6-0-0. They're playing the Seattle Kraken tonight on the road, so maybe that comes to an end there. But Seattle play them tough, but maybe Winnipeg gets to 7-0. They have yet to allow more than 3 goals in a game. They're averaging 4.8 goals a game. Average is 1.6. Power play is 43.8%. Obviously, that's going to come down. It's a limited sample size, 6 games in. Same thing for that penalty kill at 75%. Mark Scheifele and Nikolai Ehlers lead the team at 8 points each. Scheifele looks like he got into a little bit of a time machine to open the season here. He looks like Scheifele from 5 years ago. Kyle Connor's got 5 goals. Cole Perfetti, at least early on, is really taking that next step. I mean, he is so fast out there. I mean, it's fun to watch him. And we talked about Connor Hellebuck in the previous segment there, 5-0-0, 1.4 goals against, 948 save percentage. Eric Comrie did all right in his one start. It's time to allow Chris and Anthony to take their premature victory laps about the Jets being the best team in the division this year, which we talked about back when we did our Central Division preview over the summer.
Look, in these games, they already have 2 guys with 8 points, 3 with 7. They have 1 with 6, 2 with 5. I mean, they're just racking up points right now. And you got one of the best goalies in all of hockey. I don't know. Did Hellebuck go first as goalie in our league, or was it Shesterkin? I couldn't remember. I feel like Shesterkin didn't go number 1, or I could be wrong.
I'm gonna pull up the draft now.
I wasn't sure if Hellebuck went, or maybe Ottinger went first. I don't know, but Hellebuck is definitely 1-2 if throwing him with Shesterkin for me when it comes to fantasy goalies. Yeah, look at this team is going to continue to play good, definitely during the regular season for sure. And I wouldn't be surprised if they, win a division here this year.
Hellebuck was the third goalie off the board behind Ottinger and Shesterkin. He went round 3, pick 4 to the man that was about to talk down there.
I mean, look, I'm not going to take a victory lap because we're 6 games into the year. I'm going to get one of those planes that has like the message, and I'm just going to have it fly around instead. Because the victory lap, I feel like it's not good enough. Like it doesn't state what I'm really trying to get home. Maybe I'll get a fighter jet and then have it fly around. But like, I don't know if they can fly. Like, I don't know if jets can fly slowly. Anyways, the Winnipeg Jets as a team are just so good. Like they're good, right? And there's so many names that you said there. Cole Perfetti. It's nice that he's not buried on the 4th line. Thanks. That probably helps. That 3rd line, Niederreiter, Lowry, Appleton. I mean, teams traditionally that win Stanley Cups have really good 3rd lines because that line can drive. They can be both offensive and they can also take care of the puck in their own zone, right? Like you want your top 2 lines to contribute. You just want them to be responsible in their own net. 3rd lines win Stanley Cups. They have a 3rd line. Kyle Connor's doing the thing that he does. Nikolai Ehlers, I feel like finally he's also getting a little bit more ice time. That's fun. The Jets power play, yes, is very good. But, I mean, defensively as well, like, yes, they have Josh Morrissey, and then they got bodies, but those bodies are good. Like, they're good real-life defensemen, right? They're not fantasy studs, but they are actually good at doing their job. So I am not shocked to see how good the Winnipeg Jets are, right? We've discussed how I can predict the future here. And so far through 6 games, we are there. So it's okay. I get it, but again, yes, they have to get over that hump. But we're talking about the regular season here and the Jets, and they're good. I like them, and that's why I also invested a pick in Connor Hellebuck, and I have not been disappointed. I've not been disappointed with my return so far.
But I went back and watched some of the Jets' recent games, or like on on a higher speed. The thing that jumps out at me is they're a very composed team. They don't panic. They don't run around. Even like against Pittsburgh, they fell behind early. They did not. It wasn't like, oh crap, we got to get. They just kept playing their game, and they got back into it by the end of the second period, and then go on and win. Same thing with Minnesota. They fell behind a little bit early. They get that late goal, first period goal, go on to win that game in overtime. That was part of the reason when they made the coaching change this year. When who was it that stepped down and retired after last year? His name escapes me at the moment. They hired the assistant off the bench. Consistency, nothing changes, and Winnipeg. They look. The other thing too is you look at that middle six, like Nino Niederreiter, Adam Lowry, Mason Appleton might be one of the best 3rd lines in the league. Let's be real there. The Nemesnikov is the ultimate Swiss Army knife. I know he's on that second line between Ehlers and Perfetti. You can literally put Nemesnikov anywhere in the lineup. You can put him on the wing on the top, put him in the bottom 6, whatever you got to do with it. And they're built well. They're built for the rigors of a regular season. As long as they keep, if they don't deviate, they're going to be fine.
Rick Bowness was the name you were looking for. And right, to follow up on what Justin was asking about Gabe Vilardi, Vilardi is one of those guys, like he does, like the volume of shots is not there. They just somehow find the back of the net. His career shooting percentage is 17. Like that's up there, right? He scored 22 goals last year on 117 shots, right? Like that's quite the volume. His last year as well in Los Angeles, same thing. He had 23 goals on 122 shots, same shooting percentage. So I'm not necessarily worried about Vilardi, and I think obviously you want to see him collect some points because the Jets have been part of some games where they've scored a field goal. So you want to see him be part of it, but I'm not particularly worried because I also probably didn't spend a really high draft pick on him. You know what I mean? Like the thing with players who have a high shooting percentage but a low volume of shots is just say you're kind of relying on that to continue, right? And any dip in that shooting percentage, even just by a little bit, stings really hard because the volume of shots is not there. If he's not scoring goals, well, he's not giving you much after that. He's not shooting the puck. He's not out there to block shots, right? And he's not a guy who racks up a ton of assists either, right? So I'm not worried about him just because if I picked him in fantasy, I knew what I was getting into. Yeah. Like if you live downtown and there's a lot of noise and traffic, you can't complain about noise and traffic. That's what you signed up for.
And he went at the end of the 15th round this year. So that just to give you an idea of the expectations for Velarde this year. And you hope he starts to get some points just because when you're on a line with Scheifele, who is the consummate center, and then Kyle Connor, who should get all the other teams' top attention because, I mean, all the guy does, you would hope at some point, maybe some of that attention on that end frees you up a little bit more to maybe get some points. But, he's on a top line there, and we'll see if they shuffle the deck at all. If he gets, maybe they move Ehlers up or who knows. But they're not going to mess with that third line. That fourth line seems pretty set right now, too. So Velarde at least has some security in that they're probably not going to change all that much right now.
I would try to move him off that line, though, for the sole reason that because he is like a guy who shoots the puck, right? Kyle Connor's the shooter on his line. Like, let's not get it twisted, right? And I feel like he could probably benefit from playing with either Cole Perfetti or Nikolai Ehlers because those are two very good puck-moving players. Mesikov, like we said, can play well. So if he goes to a line where he is the shooter, then I feel like that could bring an uptick in his shot volume, which is never a bad thing for a player who's shooting 18%. So I think maybe that's what I'd want to see is him being a more favorable situation. Also, don't forget the Jets top line commands a ton of respect from opposing teams. So maybe that's what I'll hope for as the season goes on. If I'm a Velarde owner, is trying to get him on a line where he is the guy who they're feeding the puck to. Because again, if you have a choice between Velarde and Kyle Connor shooting, 100 out of 100, I want Kyle Connor shooting the puck at every turn. Same thing on the power play, right? Because Velarde's on the power play, but I mean, Kyle Connor's on the half wall. He's the shooter. Morrissey as well can shoot the puck. So, yeah.
Well, we'll see how the Central Division shakes up this year because, Dallas is playing just as well as almost as well as Winnipeg out of the gate. Utah's off to a good start. Minnesota off to a good start. Colorado, terrible start, but seemed to maybe starting to come out of it a tiny bit. Chicago's where they are. Nashville off to a miserable start. We'll see where they are. St. Louis kind of right where you expect there towards the middle of the division. So we'll keep an eye on the Winnipeg Jets throughout here. But it's almost time to get out of here as we say farewell on Total Hockey Now. But first things first, got to do a segment we're going to debut here called TPM. It's either you got to pick a total, a money line, or a puck line there from tonight's slate. I will go first here, and Chris and I are on the same page about one pick. He'll get to that. For me, I'm going to take the Colorado-Utah over 6.5 at even money, and here's why. The Colorado Avalanche that have easily cleared that over total this season. What? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 7 games so far. It's the end of a road trip there. Justice and Noonan going in between the pipes tonight. So depending on your perspective, that gives them better goaltending or worse goaltending than Georgiev. Depend on your take there. And you look at the Utah totals there. They've gone over that total in 1, 2, 3, 4 of their games this year. I think we'll have a little bit of a track meet there in Utah. So give me the over at even money, over 6.5 at even money.
Is Georgiev starting that game?
Noonan's going to be starting tonight.
That's unfortunate. I wanted to put the mortgage on Georgiev giving up 2.5 goals, but I guess I'll just go into work tomorrow like a regular person since I can't cash in my life savings on him giving up a ton of goals. I still feel like Colorado's going to give up a bunch, and they're certainly going to score. So I feel like that's a good one. I approve.
Now, I think Anthony's going to want to jump on the one that you're doing. So I don't know if he has one or not, but I think he's going to want the one you're on.
Yes, I do not have a bet yet. I am still learning this stuff because I have not bet during in season, so I'm not sure the difference between money line, puck line, and the totals. If that can become an explanation at some point for me.
Total is just the total number of goals scored in the game. Money line is to win. Puck line is if you see -1.5, then they got to win by 2, or if you see +1.5, then they just have to lose by less than 2. So I mean, that's all that is right there. So
next week I will become more prepared, so I know how to do this.
State of Survival asking for Puckdoku. You're gonna have to go to the Slapshot podcast to get that. Chris, do we have a new episode this week yet?
There was no episode this week. Day-to-day injury. So, but I will have Puckdoku back. I didn't know how many people I knew people cared about it. I didn't know how many people cared for Puckdoku and watching me struggle. That's what they want. And it's wild that from everybody, even the family's like, hey, Puckdoku. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, are you guys just watching? Like, do you guys watch because you care or you want to see me struggle? And it's always they want to see me struggle. And we can get on this one together here since you're new here, apparently. So we're going to, because again, we said, right? No excuses. I have the Devils to cover the puck line tonight. So I have the Devils winning by at least 2 goals. Right, Devils are -1.5 plus 140. Did we mention that Detroit had 11 shots on goal against the New York Islanders? Like, that's not like I get the Devils have given up a boatload of goals, right? 14 again, if you're not counting. But I mean, 11 shots is horrendous. I get that they're at home, doesn't matter. Detroit is also, they are averaging only 25 shots on goal per game, which is not okay. They're giving up 33. The Devils can play and they can score, right? That we know. Timo Meier leads the team in shots. So old Timo is back. This was I actually had this bet on I bet 365 at +155 this morning. So that's when I locked in. That was before the Luke Hughes news and all that started to break. So I was already bullish on them, and now they're coming in here swinging. I can't see a scenario where the Detroit Red Wings look good. I think the Devils are going to trample them from start to finish because you had 11 shots. I get they're going to have more. I get it because the Islanders are a well-structured defensive team, right? New Jersey is not. But I mean, if you're hemmed in your own zone, it's not going to matter, right? I have the Devils scoring early and often. If you want to, on Bet365, they give you the early payout. If a team takes a 3-0 lead at any point, you can take the in regulation -1 because I expect the Devils to be up at some point by at least 3 goals. So you're
the updated odds is still -1.5, but +145 now.
So yeah, I mean it came down a little bit once the news, and that was the thing. Like I was already on the Devils puck line before the Luke Hughes and Brett Pesce news, and it's like, oh, now they're getting 2 of their defensemen back, including a guy that'll help keep Detroit off the scoreboard, who doesn't shoot the puck a ton anyway at this point. And just that jolt of like getting those guys in the locker room, the lineup, that's a good one tonight, and that's at plus money. Hey, maybe Vegas is, Vegas those things we don't. Maybe that's a sucker bet, but at least on paper, it don't look like a sucker bet. So there we go.
We're going down swinging if we are, fam. That's it. We're, please play responsibly.
And I know Justice Noonan has, he's played well, 2-0, allowed fewer than 3 goals the last couple of games. But I mean, how long can Colorado go on where they kind of give up less than that? So I think that tonight, between them and Utah, get a little track meet there. So we'll see how that goes. But that'll do it for TMP. One more comment. If Detroit scores first, I am doubling down on New Jersey to win. Look at that. State of survival.
If Detroit scores first?
He thinks the Devils are going to rally real strong after that. So yeah, maybe that's yeah.
I don't think Detroit scores at all, to be honest. But that's kind of hard to predict, right? If you want to get extra spicy, just a little bit of money on the under 0.5 team total for Detroit. Just, if you want to live life on the edge a little bit. I don't know how they're going to score tonight.
No confirmation yet from what I've seen on who the Devils are going to start tonight. But considering they're at Detroit tonight and they got a home game against the Islanders tomorrow, I would think you're going to see Jake Allen tonight, Jacob Markstrom tomorrow. That would be my guess. We'll see, though, as we get a little bit closer here to puck time. And then, if Detroit, there we go. This was a fun episode today. We covered a lot. We had a good time. We got Justin Rocca from Arizona in the chat now, part of the the team here at Total Hockey Now. And we're pretty established on Thursdays moving forward. And next week's going to be Halloween, so we should have some fun with that too. Now, what do you got coming up? Subway to Shea podcast. I know you're probably taking a little bit of a break here after basically revolving your entire life around the Mets for the past 4 to 6 weeks. What can we look forward to in the offseason here?
I just want to say that this has been the longest run for me doing this show during this postseason. I think I've done more content, whether it was spaces or podcasts. So I am exhausted. I decided after the wrap up of the NLCS that I was going to take a break until the World Series is over. Then I will put a bow and review and recap the whole entire season. And then we move on to the off season and free agency, which is everyone's favorite time of the year.
And Chris, with the everybody, what is it? Schadenfreude, when you take joy out of others' misery. When is that going to be coming back with the Puck Doku?
That is Tuesday. Next Tuesday, we can hang out. You can watch Puck Doku. I hope to complete it so that you guys can stop asking me about it.
You started this, man.
I did. I did. And you know what? I thought I would be better. And
you have to supply the goods every week now. You have Puck Doku.
I know.
You can't put that out there and then take it off the table.
You're right. It's my fault. I did this to myself.
Hey, Marek checking in here before we get out of here. It's good to see you, Marek. We're about to wrap things up here on episode 65 of Total Hockey Now. And a new episode of Rip and Riff came out earlier in the week. We're on Mondays now, myself and at Mr. Jared Moore. Talk plenty of football coming off of Mondays. We talk hockey too. He's a big Devils fan. We just open up cards and BS about what comes out and have a good time. So join us for that. But nonetheless, it's time to get on out of here. But for at Rivera 86 and for at Fuzzy Chris 91, those names up on the screen one more time. There they are. I'm at fucking Adam Bernard. We'll be back with an only episode on Halloween next week. We'll do some sort of fun Halloween trick or treat segment, I'm sure, related to hockey. But for the fellas, we'll be back with you next week on Total Hockey Now. What is nice.